Hello everyone, it's Silvia. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at some mass market alternatives to some pretty expensive indie decks. So about 2 years ago, I remember I introduced a deck on my channel, and it's the Soul Mirror Oracle, See Yourself, written by Sunshine Connolly and illustrated by Anna Novaes. This deck is a deck that has been accompanying me ever since I bought it. So as I said 2 years ago, and I can actually be very precise in saying in September 2 years ago. And the reason why I know that is because it was a bit of it was the news, it was the deck. Everyone was talking about it. In Australia, it's released by Blue Angel, so obviously it probably did not have the same kind of diffusion overseas. But in Australia, I remember texting my friends and sending photos. I was the first one that was lucky enough to find a copy. And everyone was really fascinated by the deck. Everyone wanted to get a copy. It was not that easy to get. They were selling it at specific stores. And I remember actually going out of my way to try and get more copies to send to my friends because I really loved it. And I talked about it in my channel a lot. I remember that at that point, I was actually asked to show how I was using this deck because it's rather special. It's not just a beautiful deck, but it's also one of those decks that gives you the possibility to do some really excellent work, or at least, let's say, to add to your practice. If you have your personal practice as a tarot reader, or if you read it for yourself, but also for customers. It really gives you the possibility to add a new layer to, let's say, the introspective work that we sometimes do. And it's given by the fact that in specific, you will see there are two, sorry, let me just zoom in. There's a title to the card that is most definitely a keyword rather than a title. Perceptive in this case, but then there's an extra two keywords. So one gives you the possibility to focus a little bit more on the shadow work that you're doing in your practice, and the other one is focusing a little bit more on the light work. So as you can see here, for the card Perceptive, we've got oblivious for the shadow work and aware for the light work. And I was actually using these two decks let's say in combination with this oracle deck. So the True Black and the FME Tarot. These are two indie decks. And these two indie decks are, I would say, really gorgeous. They're both by the same creator, Arthur Wang. And they are on a little bit on the expensive side. I would say that I actually got this one as a present, and this one I bought it for myself. But I believe that if you want to buy both of them, which I think they're still on sale, you probably have to fork out around $500 Australian, which is obviously, with the currency exchange, it doesn't sound as bad in US dollars. It's probably around 320 US dollars for two decks is still a lot of money. And I completely understand that. As I said, one of them was a gift and the other one I really wanted to get it because of the star card. But let me just show you what I was doing, what I used to do. And there's a reason why I'm using the past tense. It's because I've actually found a really great alternative to using these two decks. And it's a mass market deck. So I'm just going to give you a quick example of what I was doing when I was using these two decks in combination with the Soul Mirror Oracle. So obviously I was just leveling the decks because we've got an Oracle deck that doesn't have the same number of cards as the Tarot deck, but that's okay. So obviously I was looking at the central card given by the Oracle, and then I was doing some kind of comparison between what I felt was needed, whether it was going towards the shadow work or to going towards the light work. So for example, is the card Perceptive resonating more as oblivious with the Hermit or as aware with the Keeper? So this is rather important for me because This is not a divination work that I was doing, and I still do. It was something that was very much ingrained in my own practice, and I was receiving so much out of these readings that I had to kind of, let's say, not force myself not to do them more often, because I don't think that this kind of work you can do it on a regular basis, or definitely not on a daily basis, probably even not on a weekly basis. It needs to be done under certain really specific circumstances in which you feel completely free and you have maybe even a couple of hours available for any kind of work you can do to expand on the messages you receive. So whether it's journaling or meditation or even going out for a walk, you do you, obviously. But in my case, I really felt like I was staying with this message for a long time. And it was working, it was really working that way. So in my case, I would have gone straight to the hermit. So I would have felt like I knew that I had to do some shadow work related to how to be perceptive and avoid being oblivious with the hermit. In this case, the message was very clear for me because it was saying, hey, by the way, the fact that you kind of removed yourself from a certain situation means that you were kind of being oblivious to what was going on, and perhaps that's not entirely something that you should be doing. So bring it back in and now look at the light work proposed by the card, which is with the keyword aware, and become aware of what the feelings were. Maybe I had a fight with someone and I removed myself from the situation, so I became the hermit. But I was oblivious to what the other person was trying to tell me, what their message was to me. And even though that doesn't necessarily make me the one that was wrong, or neither the other person, it just makes me the one that went away, that removed herself from the situation without even trying to find a solution. So bring it back and achieve that awareness. What is the other person trying to tell me? And the keeper obviously was also enlightening me on the possibility to actually keep that relationship alive and not just moving myself away and losing everything. So this is the way in which I used to use this deck, and I can assure you 100% there is some incredibly strong, powerful work to be done here. It is for those of you who have these 3 decks, try using them this way. You will not regret it. It is something that, as I said, has been very important to me for the last couple of years. I've always wanted to find a combination of decks that would have given me the possibility to look at the cards and do some shadow as opposed to light work, but with the same decks. And that's generally not something that I can do, or at least that's not anything that I was able to do with the decks that I used to have. And so it is, I am very grateful to these 3 in specific for giving me this opportunity. However, I was confronted with a lot of you saying, that is a great way to read. I really enjoy it. Thank you for sharing it. However, the Ephemera and the True Black are indeed, as I even know, and as I said, they are rather expensive. And so these are not decks that, many of you said, I'm not even considering buying these decks. And I completely understand that. And to be honest with you, as I said, one was a gift and the other one, it's a very special deck to me because of the Star card. So I kind of get it, because I would count myself, generally speaking, in the majority of people that wouldn't necessarily consider the expense of these 2 decks. And so every time that I was doing this kind of work, I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great if there were a deck, a mass market deck, or even, let's say, a more economical indie deck that I could use with this Soul Mirror Oracle in such a way that I can do the same work, but without having to take on a mortgage. And I think that my desire and your desire has been fulfilled. My wish has been fulfilled lately with Blue Angel ironically coming to our aid and publishing this deck, which is the Soul Reflections Tarot. Now, ironically, this is really a deck that has been created in order to be able to use it together with the Soul Mirror, because it has been authored again by Sunshine Connolly and illustrated by Anna Novaes. And so it is meant to be. It is a match made in heaven. Whenever I know of a tarot deck that has been published by, let's say, the same duo, and it's meant to be a copy or it's meant to be a combo with the previous deck, I'm always very skeptical. It does so happen, but very randomly, that you do find a combo with the same authors that actually works. But more often than not, there's not enough oomph. You know what I mean? There's not enough confrontation, because sometimes very good things come out of a confrontation between two cards. And in many other cases, I will find the necessity to reach out for decks that are not looking the same, because I want to have the possibility to reach out, to a different kind of vibe and energy, and even artwork and color palette and other very aesthetic stuff. And that doesn't happen when the decks look the same. So I'm always very skeptical. I always try them together anyway. And sometimes I'm actually quite happy to use them. But when I saw this, I was skeptical. And then I started using it. And oh my God. So this is an incredibly valid alternative, very mass market, affordable to the True Black and the Ephemer Tarot. I would say, and I will show you in a second, I would say that this deck can 100% replace the True Black and the Ephemer when you're working with the Soul Mirror, not just with the Soul Mirror, but when you feel like you want to reach out for the True Black or the Ephemer, reaching out for this one instead is working 100%. I promise you, you will not lose on any kind of subtleties, any nuance, any meaning. It's just really all there, and it's amazing. Okay, so as you can see, the setup is exactly the same. I do still use the Oracle deck in the middle, and then I just I split the tarot deck in two, and I put the cards on the side of the Oracle deck. I will have to say as well that the guidebook that comes with the Soul Reflection is very interesting. It is very deep. It does convey a very strong sense of understanding of tarot. It takes you on a journey to try and understand what you're seeing on the cards and try and understand what the message is for you in specific, and what the message also in specific is for that particular question that you're asking when you do divination, and also when you do your personal practice when it comes to, for example, shadow work and light work. This is a more talkative deck rather than a cosmic deck. So when if you used to use the True Black and the Ephemer Tarot, you will feel like there is a little bit less of a as above kind of energy here. It's still there in a way. But when you're looking at, even the title of the deck is called Soul Reflections, and this is the Soul Mirror. So the Soul Mirror is the mirror offering you two images that more or less correspond to the same reality. The Soul Reflection is giving you a path to choose. And I can assure you that it is a very comprehensive experience. It feels like, as I said earlier, I cannot think of any other word to use rather than journey. It does take you on a journey. The guidebook, as I said, is really, really good. And it's just not, what should I say? I would probably use it mostly for this kind of work rather than divination, but I have used it for divination, and I would say it is even better than the True Black and the Ephemer. The Ephemer Tarot, unless you familiarize with the renaming of most I would say of the major arcanas, it might be slightly difficult to use for divination. It really works really well for your personal practice, for introspection, for example. This one works straight away. There is no renaming. So it is one of those decks that you can literally read with as soon as it gets out of the box. But look, it really shines when you use it this way. So we got receptivity here from the Oracle deck, and on the shadow side we've got dissatisfied, and on the light side we got grateful. So obviously, as you can imagine, receptivity can become, you're the person we're talking about, I'm the person we're talking about, the subject in this journey, right? So I can become dissatisfied, or on the other side I can also become grateful. It depends on my receptivity. It depends on how much I am aware of a situation, how much I can read into it, and how much I can actually resonate with it. So when the satisfied takes place and I'm doing some shadow work, I'm looking at the Three of Pentacles. That is fantastic as a combination for me, because this is actually reminding me of being aware of the help that I receive on a daily basis by anyone else who is actually living with me, going down this journey with me, and perhaps I'm thinking about a project at work, and obviously I need to be aware of everything that is being brought to the table by someone else that is next to me and that I didn't necessarily realize before. And this card is telling me to do that. So it's also telling me to do some shadow work on the reason why I don't feel grateful. I feel the opposite. I feel dissatisfied. Why am I feeling dissatisfied? Was I expecting something different? So this is an excellent work for me. This is an excellent starting point. And I will do a lot of meditation and a lot of journaling. This is the way in which I do shadow work. On the other hand, what I'm doing is being grateful. I'm looking at the keyword grateful, and then I look at the tarot card, which is the Lover's card. And obviously this one talks to me about a union. It talks to me also, it's a chosen union. So the Lover's card also implies and always implies a choice. So it's not just a matter of recognizing the other person. It's a matter of understanding that it's a choice. The other person is there because I've chosen to be with the other person. So I need to be grateful of everything that they bring to the table in this collaboration. And it's not necessarily a union when it comes to a romantic relationship. It could be anything related to a partnership. So as you can see, it works really well. Like it's almost as if you were doing two kind of readings at once. That's what I wanted you to understand about how to work with these decks. So, for example, devotion with the indifferent with the King of Wands. So the King of Wands, that has that kind of energy, and it's, I was talking to my members the other day because we started the vampire lore, so the study of vampire folklore through the study of about 9 vampire themed decks. And I was talking about the difference between the King of Wands and the King of Pentacles. And when I talk about the King of Wands, to me is the entrepreneur, as opposed to the King of Pentacles being the manager. Because the King of Wands is the one that has the energy and the creative spark of fire in order to start a new business. That's why we call them, the Kickstarter, the fire starter, the entrepreneur, the boss that creates something from nothing because they have the fire to do so. And the indifferent. So devotion can be generated indifference in someone who's always churning on things and building new stuff and doesn't necessarily stay long enough to see the fruit of what they've done, of what they planted, what they created. And that in a long term creates indifference. And I've seen it so many times. For example, in writers, I used to be a mentor for a group of writers here in Sydney. And you wouldn't believe the amount of time in which I was talking to people who created a story and they were very quickly moving on to the next one without even a doubt, because they had become indifferent to the story they created first. That is a risk of the King of Wands. That is definitely one of the risks of the King of Wands. On the shadow side of the King of Wands. So this one works perfectly. On the other hand, what we've got here, we've got passionate with the Seven of Wands. So we still have this kind of fiery energy. But we also understand that when you find yourself in a situation comparable to the Seven of Wands, you're sticking up to what you believe in. And that might actually be daunting, but at the end of the day, it does bring up that passion, because the Seven of Wands belongs to the Suit of Wands, and the Suit of Wands is the Suit of Fire. And so being passionate about what you're doing, even though there may be people going against you and telling you you're doing the wrong thing, when you're passionate about it, you will defend it. So it is, honestly, it's a fantastic way to use these two decks together. I'm not entirely sure that they were meant to be used this way. But then again, when you're looking at the soul mirror and you see this dichotomy between the two keywords associated with the title of the card, it kind of brings you there, doesn't it? It kind of suggests this is exactly what you need to do when you're looking at these cards. So the uncertainty with the Queen of Swords and the Justice card. So the Queen of Swords is reminded of the doubtful, uncertainty and doubtful on the shadow side. And I get it. I completely get it. I used to say that my significator is 80% Queen of Swords, 20% Queen of Cups. And I'm still okay with that, because I still feel that the Queen of Swords sometimes, when read reversed, when when you're going on a research down the path of the shadow work, you will recognize that she is plagued by doubt sometimes. Being able to always tell the black from the white and the bullshit, and being the justice of the judge, the justice of a tarot deck is very heavy sometimes. And on the long term, when things become exacerbated and they kind of force you to be bitter, sometimes you will be plagued by doubts. And I do feel it on myself. Sometimes I will tell you, sometimes it's actually very difficult to make a decision, because being the Queen of Swords, I need to be aware of everything, and I never feel like I have enough elements. I feel like I'm back in the Two of Swords situation, in which I don't have all of the elements to make that decision. And then, this is the fruit of all the doubts that I've got. So uncertainty and being doubtful is definitely recognized by reading the Queen of Swords reversed. On the other hand, what we've got uncertainty with confidence. So it's the opposite of having doubts. Finally, you are seeing things clearly and you can make a decision. And ironically, there is the Justice card, which is very much associated with the Queen of Swords, because the Queen of Swords is the archetype of the judge. So the judge needs to exercise justice. See how beautiful these cards are. Not just the cards are beautiful, but they also really offer you the possibility of doing some pretty intensive kind of work on yourself. I would definitely recommend these two together. And if you're if you were thinking about that you wanted to buy the True Black and the Ephemeral Tarot, but they were too pricey for you, the Soul Reflection Tarot is a fantastic alternative for those two decks. So you get one instead of two, so it's really a wonderful option for you to consider. And the next mass market deck alternative to a rather pricey indie deck is the Margareta Peterson Tarot, to replace, or let's say to use in the same context as the Tarot is colored by Ethel Colquhoun. Now, this is an indie deck, and it's not just, let's say, it is rather pricey, but it's also kind of difficult to find, because to my knowledge, there's only one place where you can buy it, and it's the Folger Press that is based in the UK. When they run out, so they run out of decks every now and then they do, and they will stay out of print and out of stock for maybe a couple of years, and then they will do a big announcement and they will reprint them, and then they sell them out again, and along we go with this vicious circle. So this deck is, I've gone back and forward to this deck for a number of years, and to be honest with you, I still don't think that I made up my mind whether I actually like it or not, and there's a reason, and I've already said this publicly, so I've already announced that, and I have absolutely no problem in repeating this, because it is a little bit embarrassing. It is embarrassing, especially for someone like me. One of the things that I'm really proud about myself is the fact that I've been collecting Tarot and Oracle decks for ever since I was, collecting them ever since I was 14. Reading them even before that. So I'm actually really proud of that. I'm proud of my collection. I'm proud of having so many decks. We're getting closer to the 700, including obviously also Lenormand, etc. But 700 decks is, in my opinion, is a good collection. So I'm actually very proud of that. So something that happened when I acquired this deck makes me incredibly embarrassed. I am ashamed to say that I made a mistake. I bought this deck not understanding that it was not the deck that I thought I was buying. It turns out that that deck that I saw, admittedly only saw one or two cards, and it wasn't at the time in which the Google reverse image search was working. So it wasn't introduced yet, and so I couldn't do that. So I just did my research. I thought I found it. It just looked really similar to the Dream Dust Shamanic Tarot. And it's not the Dream Dust Shamanic Tarot, it's the Tarot Scholar. So it was very embarrassing because I made a mistake. I literally, not just, because sometimes people then realize that they made a mistake before they actually hit the buy button. But no, I went ahead and I bought it. And it arrived, and I would have to say that I didn't even understand it immediately because I didn't know the name of the other deck. So I received this one. I went through the cards and I was like, I cannot see the card that made me want to buy the deck. And so I was looking through the card, and at the beginning I even thought, this is a defective copy. I don't see this card. And then I counted the cards and they were all there. And then I could recuperate the image that I saw, and I saw that, I believe that it was one of the kings that I really liked. And I went to the king here and I saw that it wasn't the same deck. And you know what? I think that it's kind of liberating to say these kind of things and to confess them, because, it means that it's okay for me to make a mistake. And, and I'm okay with admitting that I made a mistake. I'm okay with saying I was that silly. But I have a deck. I have a deck in my collection. It is one of those decks that is actually rather famous. So when looking at this deck and considering whether I was going to keep it or not, and I have to admit, I was so disappointed that at first I thought about rehoming it immediately, or even sending it back to Folger Press, but I did not consider because of the cost of shipping. But I thought about rehoming it, and then I just realized that I can't really part ways with it, at least not yet. I'm not using it. But it is a collectible item, and so I'm definitely going to keep it. However, I would have to say that this deck is very abstract, too abstract. I thought at the beginning that I could actually read with it, in the sense that I could somehow find a way to relate to the cards. And also, please understand, this is a thought-inspired deck. And so it's got the hermetic titles at the bottom here. For example, the King of Wands is the Lord of the Flame and Lightning, the King of the Spirits of Fire. This, I believe, is the hermetic title as assigned by the Golden Dawn and not by Aleister Crowley. It does make a difference for me because I do prefer a lot more the Golden Dawn, the hermetic titles by the Golden Dawn, rather than Aleister Crowley's ones. But that is the only thing that I wanted to specify about this deck. When everything else comes to the table, when you need to assess whether you can read with it or not, I would have to say I have to do some pretty extensive mental gymnastic in order to associate the way in which I look at the card and the meaning of the card itself, even considering that it's a thought-inspired deck, so not an RWS, I would still actually struggle. I read it alchemically because that is the way in which it resonates the most with me. But even then, to be honest, I thought that alchemically would have given me the possibility to look at the colors and maybe recognize the colors. Obviously, red being associated with wands because it's the suit of fire, and there's a lot of red in the suit of fire and the suit of wands here. But then again, if you look at the rest of the cards, that's not necessarily the case. And so it is one of those decks that you really have to find your way to read with it, because it doesn't necessarily come to you, or at least it doesn't come to me personally. I have been studying this deck when I was still assessing whether I wanted to keep it or not, and then I understood that it wasn't a matter of reading with it, it was just a matter of understanding that this is a fantastic deck. It's being created for a purpose. These are constellations, basically. I was reading about Ethel's understanding of her work of art and the way in which she's created the deck. And that suddenly started clicking in a different way when I stopped looking at the cards and trying to find the meaning of the card on the images. I just really started just looking at the cards and improvise some kind of a connection with them. However, when it comes to what I believe is a fantastic mass market alternative to this deck, if you don't have it, is the Tarot by Margareta Peterson. Now, when it comes to this deck, well, it's a mass market deck. This one, however, is a very specific edition of the deck. I believe it's the, maybe it's an anniversary kind of edition. It might say this year completed in 21 years and a legend, the Margaret Peterson Tarot, first published in 2001. So this special edition is published for the 20th anniversary. And this is the one that has got maroon borders, as you can see here. So the maroon borders are different from the non-special edition, non-anniversary edition, because those borders are more like, I would say gray, but it's a warm kind of gray. I am not a fan at all. I had my own personal copy trimmed out of the borders because I just did not like it. I much prefer this one. The images are exactly the same, but you wouldn't believe the difference a border makes. The color of the border makes. It just brings out the color. It gives them a little bit more of a depth and brilliance and saturation. The gray, light green / yellow borders were just really washing out the colors inside of the images. This is a deck that is just as abstract as the Tarot Scholar, if not more, because with the Tarot Scholar we kind of see the same process. So I'm not an artist, so I'm going to say something very profane, but to me those look like splashes of colors, all right? So one inside the other, the Tarot Scholar. This one, I wouldn't even know what the images look like. Sometimes we may feel like we can see something. For example, this is the Chariotess, and I can definitely make out the shapes of, I believe, two cats, a white one and a black one. And probably here also, I don't know if you can tell, but this looks like a face. So there are the elements that I would recognize as pertaining to the RWS, the cards, but at the same time, it does present itself with the level of abstractness that is that it reminds me a lot of the Tarot Scholar. And I would say that combination of the two, the fact that I can still recognize some elements of the cards on the cards themselves, it just makes it more approachable. It makes it like a deck that I actually want to use. It's a deck that I look at, and it might take me a minute, but I kind of recognize it resonates, it clicks. And so I would say this is a fantastic, but it's still very beautiful, it's still very abstract, and it still gives you the opportunity to also be considered, for example, as a collectible item. The non-special edition version is still available. The publisher is AGM, by the way, so it might be coming from overseas. But I've seen tarot shops having this deck in stock. So it is still definitely still available. And I would say it's just such an amazing alternative. I honestly look at the cards and I like them so very much. I don't have to do any mental gymnastics in order for me to understand that I want to keep it. It might come into play when I need to do a reading with this deck. But after a couple of months that I was using it, let me tell you, that wasn't difficult at all. It just came naturally. So I would consider this deck to be a fantastic alternative, very affordable mass market alternative to the Tarot Scholar. Another excellent alternative to a tarot deck that is an indie deck, and I believe it's probably one of the most wanted indie tarot decks that is now tarot print, to the point that there's a lot of us that secretly hope that it's going to be either reprinted indie or at least being picked up by a mass market publisher. It is the Yokai Yochi Tarot. I just love this deck so much. It came to me via a very interesting story. I literally was not looking to buy this deck, but there was a lady in Canada that wanted a different deck that I had, and she did not want to buy it, but she wanted to exchange it for this deck. And I thought to myself, yep, absolutely, go for it. And when I received it, I kind of understood why everyone likes this deck and everyone wants it, because it's not just about the supernatural folklore in Japan, which is already very exotic to many of us and very interesting and appealing. But it's also one of those decks that has got something magical. I cannot understand, I cannot tell you what it is, but it does come with something magical. Maybe it's because the color palette is so muted. I don't know. Maybe it's the manifestation of this magical intention by Hugo Blake, the author. Maybe it's because it deals with magical beings. But then again, there's a lot of decks that do that, and to my knowledge, they don't necessarily come with any sense of magic and wonder. This is a deck that I will never rehome. I am also starting to use it less and less because I don't want to ruin it, and the reason is that I can do it because there is this mass market alternative, which is fantastic. This is the Marga Biazzi and Paolo Bertazzo Yokai Tarot, released by Lo Scarabeo, I believe October last year. And when I presented this deck on my channel, I actually made a promise to you saying, this is just my first impressions. I'm literally unboxing the deck. I don't know whether it will be a decent alternative to the Yokai Yochi Tarot. There's a number of yokai based decks out there. It seriously is almost on par with vampire decks. There's so many. And I believe that some of them are a bit of a hit and miss. Some of them are really excellent. And I promised you to work with this deck enough for me to finally come up with the verdict and tell you whether I believe that it can replace the Yokai Yochi or not. And obviously, because we're talking about it in this video today, the answer is yes. The answer is, oh my goodness, because this deck, it takes a while, trust me, it takes a while. And it probably doesn't help that I also did not work with it straight away. As I said, it came to me in October last year. October is my Spooktober month, and I generally tend to plan all of the videos for October well in advance, because sometimes I need to acquire some decks or I need to work with them just to know whether they fit for the purpose. And then, you know, I went on the whole month of October, and then in November I had all of the decks. And last year, I don't know what happened, but last year in November I received like 5 Kickstarter decks. It was the Kickstarter galore kind of month. And so I didn't have time in November. And then December is more for different kind of vibes. And I didn't focus on that in December either. And then, unfortunately, my cat Missy got really ill and then she passed away. And it was 2-3 months in which I just needed comfort decks, and I wouldn't call this a comfort deck. So because of a number of reasons, I really took my time before I actually started working with this deck, trying and understand whether it's a good deck, whether it's done in a proper way. I finally did have the time, also because I went to Japan in June, July, and I have to say, this is fantastic. I would say the things that at the beginning were making me a little bit doubtful, sorry, but when this happens, I'm like, yee! Do you see this? Okay, we've got the Emperor and the Star. Okay, not the same card, but do you see the yokai is the same? It's the Kirin. The Kirin is the dragon. The dragon is the most amazing creature in Japanese folklore, specifically yokai. It actually comes from Chinese folklore. Dragons are incredibly good omens, signs of wealth and health, and really good energy and vibes in China, and it has been integrated into Japanese culture as well. So whenever you see a dragon is always a really good sign. And whenever this happens, that the two, because there's a limited number of yokais, there's a lot, but there's a limited number of yokais that are well known and researched. So yokai-based decks, whether they're oracle or tarot decks, they will probably have or present you with this opportunity, with this serendipity in which you pull the same yokai out of 2 different decks at the same time. So going back to what I was saying, okay, similar vibes in here as well. I was doubting. There were a couple of things I was not necessarily sure about when I was looking at this deck, and one of them was the combination of colors, the color palette. So I was thinking, I kind of see that working for the yokai yochi, because as you can see, yes, this has a limited color palette, but it's far less limited than the yokai yochi. The yokai yochi has literally just a couple of colors: beige, black, and yellow, and that's it. So this one has got a lot more and wider range of colors, and it's still not, it wasn't convincing me, right? So I was just looking at it and I was thinking to myself, are they trying to kind of emulate the yokai yochi? Are they trying to, show you with an alternative by using a limited color palette? Unbelievable. Look at these cards. Even together, they read really, really well. And then so this was one, the color palette was one of the things I was not necessarily convinced about. And when it comes to the associations, there was a time in which I was okay with, let's say, judging the association between the card and the yokai chosen, because there was a time in which my knowledge about yokais was really good. Unfortunately, I lost that a little bit because obviously there's so many things you can retain in your memory. I do remember the main ones, but when I still knew a lot more about yokais, I was looking at the ones chosen to represent which card, and I was thinking to myself, I'm not entirely sure that this is 100% my choice. This would have been my choice. I even posted a video in which I actually compare all of my yokai based decks, and I rate them, considering whether the associations are correct or not. And this one wasn't the one that won. But I would say now that I'm actually using it, by the way, again, so the 4 and the 6 of Swords, same character. This is just not the same card, but the same yokai. And it's just really amazing that it works this way. So I would say that starting to work with this deck, actually led me to understand what the choices were, why they were taken, and why they're actually excellent choices. And I would say that at this point, I don't know whether I'm going to say something completely profane and people are gonna clutch their pearls, but I actually prefer this one to the yokai yochi. Not that I'm going to rehome the yokai yochi, because that's not gonna happen, but the yokai taro is just really brilliant when you want a deck that you can actually use in a reading without, you know, having this constant fear about ruining the cards, because now the yokai yochi might fetch around $400. So you don't want to ruin a deck that is that valuable. Obviously, the mass market alternative can be found for around $40-50 Australian. These two are more complementary than, be replaceable, let's say. However, if you don't have the yokai yochi, this is a fantastic alternative to it. Another deck that I think is a fantastic mass market alternative to a rather expensive and now I think officially out of print indie deck, the Madhouse deck by Eugene Vinitsky, is the Magician Matters and Madman Tarot by Travis McHenry. This one used to be a Kickstarter campaign, so it was originally in the deck, but it has been picked up by Rockpool, which is a mass market publisher, and it has been released, I believe, about a year and a half ago. This is a fantastic deck. This is so interesting. It is one of those decks that each and every card comes with a story. And it depends obviously on the fact that, well, Travis McHenry is a genius. I strongly believe that he's a genius. You may like or not like, let's say, his choices or let's say his art style or his writing style. But I believe that when it comes to knowledge, he is definitely almost to the level of a scholar. So it does have an academic knowledge of the arguments he's using in his decks. And I would say that also helps me consider it as a replacement to the Madhouse Tarot, because Eugene Vinitsky does seem to have an equally academic, equally deep knowledge of the subject he's using in his decks. Just if you're not familiar, so basically he's also the same author as the Venetian Tarot and also the Mayan Tarot and the Time Tarot, I believe, and there might be another couple of decks. And I believe that those decks are still for sale. He's got an Etsy shop. But I have been looking for the Madhouse Tarot for ages and I cannot find it. It is not for sale in his website, at least at the time of filming today. And maybe it will be reprinted, because I know that there is demand for that deck, but that I know of, it's gone. So I'm actually kind of sorry that I didn't buy it when I could. It was rather expensive as an indie deck, and also because well, in Australian dollars, it would have been something around 150 plus another 60 for shipping, which made it too expensive for me. It's just out of my price range. But I was really sorry about it because, well, being someone who's been studying, I studied, psychology of crime, amongst other things related to neurochemistry, for example. And when I was studying psychology of crime, you have different theories as to justify the reason why a person will become violent or a criminal. And there's the biological, the Freudian, there's so many evolutionary theory. There's so many different theories. But I was always fascinated by the case studies that we were studying. And I've always been fascinated by the idea of insanity as it was defined back in the days. Nowadays, we don't call it like that anymore. We understand that mental illness is not just an illness, but it's something that can be devastating for the ones that go through that, but also for their family. And I have experience with that. And so I've always been fascinated by this topic because I always wanted to understand. I always wanted to know. Also, in order for myself to be at peace with some things that have happened in my life, with some people really close to me that suffer from severe mental illness. And when I looked at the Madhouse Tarot, I really felt like I wanted that deck. So it's always been a bit of a sore point for me not having been able to buy a copy. But when I saw this deck, I thought to myself, is this a sign? Is this a deck that I should actually get to know, that I should buy and I get to know, in order for me to see whether I can replace the Madhouse Tarot? Now, this one is called the Magician, Martyrs and Madmen. So you also have, three categories of people. You don't just have madmen, but magicians and martyrs. I would say that we're very, very close. It's not the same category of people, but we're very close. I would say that these are all historical examples, which is making it even more interesting, because to me, it feels like when I was doing the case studies for my tests, my exams at uni, whenever I was studying Ted Bundy, for example, it felt, this deck feels like, there's no Ted Bundy here, but had Travis McHenry made a deck with modern examples of madmen, that would have probably made the cut, because the dynamics of the research done behind this deck are very similar to what we were doing in the case studies, trying to understand what happened, trying to understand what pushed a person to do something as horrible as they have done. And hello, Alistair Crowley. So one thing that I really appreciate about this deck is not just the art style. The art style is actually really beautiful. It looks really beautiful to me. And it also does remind me a little bit of the Madhouse art style. Is the fact that we've got the names at the bottom of the card. So it is, I would say it does give you the possibility to go down the rabbit hole and do your own research. The guidebook does present you with a little bit of information, at least when it comes to the association between a specific character, let's say donor party for the Five of Pentacles. So why is the donor party being chosen to depict this card? Because it was a group of 87 pioneers who set off from Independence, Missouri in May 1846, traveling to California in search of a better life. The journey was organized by George Dana and James Reed. Travel along the Oregon Trail in the 1800s was extremely dangerous, and the party had a series of mishaps that slowed their journey and drained their supplies. When they arrived far behind schedule in the Sierra Nevada mountains, they wound up stuck in a snowstorm and had to spend winter on the mountain. When the food ran out, the donor party began to starve, and before long they started eating their dead friends and family out of necessity. That is more like a Seven of Swords for me. Tensions between the families led to multiple murders, and those slain bodies were also eaten. Of the 87 people who first set out, 42 died without reaching California. I think it's amazing to get to know the story behind the scene, let's say, depicted. Oh, it's not here, it's the Five of Pentacles. This is the Six of Pentacles, my bad, sorry about that. I saw Five Pentacles. My bad. But it's very interesting when you see the card, when you read the story behind it, and you learn something new, but you also learn a way to remember the card and remember the feeling that it gave you when you were reading the story. So the next time that you will pull a Five of Pentacles, I bet you will probably remember the story of the donor party, and those vibes will stay with you. Being left out in the cold, finding yourself going through some unbearable circumstances and having to do something horrible, and being completely at a loss for hope. So there is a lot there that really fascinates me, and I think it's a fantastic deck, to the point of, because I don't have the Madhouse Tarot, I would say I'm very happy that I've got this one, because I'm not entirely sure that the Madhouse Tarot will give me as much as this when it comes to understanding these figures, understanding these characters, and also agreeing or disagreeing, because of course we can also disagree with the association between the character and the cards. So we've got, for example, Ivan the Terrible with the Three of Swords, Mervyn Touché, Saint Sebastian with the Eight of Wands, Nero, with the Emperor, does that resonate with me and my knowledge of these characters? And maybe I don't have any knowledge of the characters, so I would go back to the guidebook or I would do my own research. But this is a fantastic deck. And also, let me tell you, this is a fantastic deck for a deck study, because it's one of those decks that it's probably also very polarizing. There will be people agreeing 100% with the choices and people who will find the choices not good. So it's it also will provide you with a lot of banter, let's say, a lot to talk about. So I would say this is an incredibly valid alternative to the Madhouse Tarot. Having said that, because I don't have the Madhouse Tarot, if you have it and you don't like it and you want to part ways with it, please let me know, because I'm so curious about that deck and I really kick myself for not having bought it when I had the possibility. So another mass market alternative to a deck that I'm not even entirely sure whether it's still available, even if it's an indie deck. So this is the Tarocchi Gialli, which was a reward from a Kickstarter campaign. I have talked so many times about this deck that I honestly don't feel like I can tell you anything new about it, other than I still love it, which is nothing new, but I still love this deck. However, I do understand that this is a niche deck in the sense that because the movies, so it's obviously based on horror movies from the Italian production, Italian cinematographic scene from the 60s and the 70s, so Mario Bava and Dario Argento. And I completely understand that that might be a bit of a niche for people who A, are not Italian, and or B, are not interested in horror movies coming from Italy. And for me, I am Italian, and I've always been interested in horror movies to the point that Dario Argento, I don't know Mario Bava a lot, but Dario Argento, I've been studying Dario Argento's movies for many years. So when it comes to this deck, this is a little bit of a niche deck, but I've heard from so many of you, even non-Italians, and that really makes me happy, because as an Italian, I'm always thinking that what we like that is in our culture is just for us, not in the sense that I wouldn't want other people to experience it, but it's just for that we're the only one that will be interested in it, because no one else will be. And so when I hear that there's a lot of you, for example, appreciating, for example, Dylan Dog, which is exquisitely Italian, although there was an English movie made out of it. But that really makes me happy, because it's almost as if it was making me proud of being Italian. And so when I heard that there's a lot of people that missed out on this Kickstarter and that they really wanted this deck because it looked really interesting to them, I was really happy to hear that. But at the same time, I was thinking it's probably going to be very difficult to find it. Now, this is by the Chain Assembly. As you can see here, it says that at the bottom of each card, Chain Assembly. So maybe if you check out that website, you might be able to still find it. Apologies, I didn't check it before filming this, but I'm not entirely sure. It was one of those Kickstarter campaign that was sent out, I believe, about a year ago. And then I haven't heard about it since. In any case, if you cannot find this one, or if it's a little bit on the pricey side, I definitely recommend the Horror Tarot by Todd Alcott's, because the principle is the same, but this one is more based on, I would say, very easily recognizable horror movies. So it is the same concept of taking inspiration from horror movie posters. But this one here, as I said, it's about the Italian movies from the 60s and the 70s, which could be quite an obscure kind of topic unless you've been studying it or you're familiar with it. This one is more classic, it's more recognizable. So I would say that this is a very valid alternative. So let's have a look at them side by side. Obviously, there is a difference, as you can quickly see, in size. To be honest with you, I would prefer the smaller one because of, well, it makes it easier to handle. It's more manageable. But this one, I still like it because, you know, there is more real estate for the images, so I can see them more clearly. I would say this one, okay, let's just, let me clarify something, because I know that the Todd Alcott's decks are not mass market in every country, as in they're not diffused to the masses in every country. However, for example, in Australia, it's still considered an indie deck. If you want to buy it, it used to be in stock at a couple of online stores, but they're not. Either they closed down. Almost all of our online stores closed down in Australia. It's just not a business that is sustainable at all. Also because of the shipping cost, of course, and also because we get everything 6 months after the other, so it just doesn't make sense anymore. However, I would have to say that I was able to get this from Amazon UK. So on Amazon UK, there is the super legitimate, is the shop of Todd Alcott. It's just that it's called the Philosopher Guide, the unemployed, you see here, Unemployed Philosophers Guild. And it is at the original price, so I believe it's around $55 Australian, which is, honestly, it's even less than some of the mass market decks that are released nowadays in here. And it's just so you don't have to pay the $60 that were, if you bought it from the Etsy store, you would have had to pay $60 just in shipping costs to Australia. With Amazon UK, it's just a relatively smaller cost. If you have an Amazon Prime, not that I'm promoting it, absolutely not, I'm just giving the facts. I do have an Amazon Prime membership, and I did not pay for shipping. So this deck only costed me $55, which, as I said, is actually less than some of the latest mass market decks that I bought. There you go. So in any case, let's have a look at these ones. By the way, there will be some cards, especially from the Tarocchi Gialli, that I will not be able to show you for the usual reasons that we now know, we heard about, and we're kind of fed up with it. I don't know if you are, but I am for sure. So as you can see, even from this one, for example, this is clearly Regan. This is clearly Regan, or the actress Linda Blair, when she acted as Regan in The Exorcist. I would say that the resemblance is uncanny, so I don't even know what Todd had to do when it comes to copyrights. I have no idea, but you will notice that the classic examples of horror movies that you can find here are very recognizable. In here, you don't find them. Why? Because these are being inspired by the movies, but they're not actual movies. So that is a slight difference, but I would say that, or even here, for example, this is clearly The Shining. Jack Torrance played by Jack Nicholson in The Shining. I love that book, the movie as well, I would say. Even though I remember reading about how Stephen King was not happy about the adaptation of his book. And I thought to myself, what are you expecting? What do you want? I think it was really well done. But in any case, it's just my opinion. So I would say both of these bring a lot of horror vibes, obviously. They also bring a lot of that sense of darkness that we know it's there, and sometimes we don't want to look. I'm watching so many horror movies lately, and I will have to say there's always the element in which, in many, many movies, almost in all of them, there's always that element or that moment in the movie in which the victim or would-be victim or soon going to be victim is haunted by something, whether it's, I don't know, a werewolf chasing them, or a vampire chasing them, or an unknown supernatural entity chasing them, and so on and so forth. And there is a moment in which, even though for like 3/4 of the movie they still run away, there's a moment in which they kind of think about giving up. It's part of the hero's journey. It just works that way. It works that way since ancient Greece time, so I don't see any reason why to change that. But it is very easy to recognize that moment. And one thing that most horror movies will show you will be a close portrait of a close-up of the face of the victim, and the fact that they actually move their head away and they look away. Think about, for example, Ripley in Alien, the first Alien, when basically you have that scene in which the head of the alien is this close to Ripley, and Ripley just literally moves her face away. That is very common in, if you start noticing these kind of things, you will see them over and over again in all of the movies. That is a very common moment, and that is also, let's say, a pivotal moment, because from that moment onward, the victim or the hero will start fighting back. So there is that moment in which we acknowledge darkness, but we still want to look away. When we have done that, that marks the moment in which we will turn back and face it. And I believe that especially in the Todd Alcott's Horror deck, Horror Tarot, that is very clear. It's if there's a snapshot, there you go, even in the Fool here. If there's a snapshot on time, it's the time in which we are still looking away. But there is the presence of darkness here, but we're still looking away. So it is very interesting to me to see this reflected in the cards. And I really think that they've done a fantastic job. Both the creators of these two decks have done a fantastic job. They are very faithful to what their premises were. If there is this sense of being in a contract, you know, whenever you start watching a movie, you start reading a book, you feel like you're entering a contract with the creator or the author or the director. And the director has to fulfill his contract. You are there to watch the movie till the end, to read the book till the last page, to look at the deck and use it. But the creator has the duty to provide you with what they promised you, with the enjoyment of this product. And it feels almost as if you can see it laid out in these cards especially. And it's something very, very interesting. It's something that I personally do not find in all of the decks. There are a couple of decks that really clearly show you that, but not all of them. And I do believe that it is probably because these are based on movies and that sense of contract is probably stronger. But that's just my opinion. In any case, I would definitely recommend, if you wanted this deck and you cannot find it, I would definitely recommend Todd Alcott's deck. Even if you are in Australia, because there is this way, escamotage, let's call it, in order to buy it without having to spend $60, $70 just for shipping. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. So when I did the unboxing of the mass market edition of the Bonestone and Earth Flesh Tarot by Avalon Cameron, illustrated by Anna Torian, I don't know if you remember what I said. I do remember, because I've been thinking about it many times and I thought to myself, I made a mistake. So I said I wasn't going to make a comparison between the indie edition and the mass market edition. And the reason behind that, even though I still kind of believe in it, I said this is not a combo that I would like to compare, because this deck was $444 US. That's the price that this deck was selling for. When not at the Kickstarter obviously was a lot cheaper than that, but that deck, there was a story behind the Kickstarter as well. I'm not going to go into details. A lot of you backed it, and so you will remember what happened. Then afterwards, Avalon found a few original decks printed for the Kickstarter that she had been printing more than the pledges. And so basically she found them and she sold them out of her own website for $444 US plus shipping. I believe that to this day, this is probably the most expensive deck that has been sold by the author themselves, in the sense that, of course, you can spend more when you buy, for example, the Majestic Earth, for example. That's another deck that was sold by the original creator after it had become sought after, and it was reprinted and it sold for, I believe, $350 US. So this one, $444, Majestic Earth $350. Now the Majestic Earth, when it was sold let's say as a second-hand deck, as a collectible item, could have fetched even $500. But when it was the actual creator selling it themselves, that was kind of a shock. We had never seen them before, and many of us that wanted this deck considered whether it was ethical or not. Not me, I bought it. Not me. I bit the bullet. I bought it. I saved. I remember I saved for a while. Avalon found, she put, I don't know whether she found all of the decks in one go, but then she put them for sales every 2-3 months. But in any case, I had the possibility to save for a while, and then I was able to get it. And I remember thinking to myself, am I going to regret spending so much money on a deck? I can honestly say right now, especially because we didn't know back then, or we kind of knew, but we didn't know the timeline. Okay, so we knew that it was going to be reprinted mass market, but we didn't know when, and we didn't know how. And Anna Turian had already said there would have been changes to the cards, many of the cards. And Avalon herself said that there would have been a lot of changes in the guidebook. So this is the story behind the reason why many of us bit the bullet and spent $444 to buy this deck, and B, why, let's say, I did not want to compare it to the mass market edition. And then I thought to myself, is that because I feel like I would berate myself for having spent that much money on the indie edition, and just because I didn't want to be patient and wait maybe 2-3 years to get my hands on the mass market edition? Maybe a bit of pride, maybe. I don't entirely know. I know that is part of it, not all of it. I also know, and I believe that this is one tarot deck that I do not regret spending that much money on. I love this deck so much, and I'm proud to have the indie edition. I also don't entirely believe that making a comparison and pointing out all of the differences is going to help a lot of people, because this is probably not even, you cannot really find this deck any longer. And it's also because those of us who have the indie edition are probably going to stay with it. We're not probably going to rehome it. There was a time in which the mass market edition wasn't out yet, and so there were a lot of people trying to rehome this deck. But it was the time in which, knowing that it was coming out mass market, no one wanted to spend $200, $300, $400 on it. So there's a number of things. I'm not going to spend more time on it, but to be honest with you, I just changed my mind in comparing these two, in the sense that now I believe that I work with this deck. I believe that this is a fantastic deck. It's a great deck. Is it, let's say, would I spend $444 on this deck? No. Would I spend them again on this one? Probably. In any case, let me just, so I'm not going to point out, see that the design is different, the card stock is different, the book is different. We all know that. I mean, this is a mass market deck, and I've seen it sold for 36 Australian dollars. 36 Australian dollars. 444 US, 36 Australian. It's okay. It is what it is. This is also part of being a collector. Not hesitating in getting what you want, even though it might be expensive. That is what I believe is my collector persona. This is something that I'm okay with. But today I'm here to tell you that if you don't have the indie and you're doubting whether you want the mass market or not, I would definitely say get it, because it's fantastic. It's a fantastic deck. It's a great alternative to the indie edition. The book is amazing. Yes, there was a lot of talk about the book is not going to be the same. The book is not going to give you as much as the chunky monkey of a book that we've got from the indie edition. But let me just show you how much you still get. This is a core card. Let's just pick a minor, because, just wanted to show you the Six of Swords, Odessa. So you've got a little bit of an introduction here. You've got inner reading. So it just immediately tells you how to specifically situate this card and this image in the context of reading card. And then we got reversed. And then we got the narrative, which talks about who Odessa was. Odessa knows distance will bring the inner peace she longs for. With only the stars to guide her, she must traverse the rough sea in search of that place that grants her respite from her woes. So I would say this is really interesting because not all decks do that. As a matter of fact, less and less do that, mass market. They will probably take inspiration from maybe historical figures and they would just name them, but they don't necessarily give you their story. Or even when they do, they don't necessarily combine it with the meaning of the card, or they tell you the justification why they chose that specific historical figure for that card. So this is already 100% great for me. I love it. I would not probably look for anything else. If I'm interested in one of these characters to know more about them, I know that I can because I've got all the details that I need to do some research. And then you also have journaling prompts, which I always appreciate because I do a lot of journaling. In this case, it literally asks you to put yourself in this situation, and it asks you, where would you love to travel? And of course, that's a wonderful question for me because I would probably just make one of my many lists of my bucket list of the places I want to go to. When has distance gifted you with a healing perspective? And that is very deep. I would say this is an excellent book, absolutely excellent. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to make a comparison, because I'm not trying to convince you that this one, the book in here gives you exactly the same as the book or the cards in the indie edition. I'm telling you that if you don't have this one, this is a fantastic deck. So it's slightly different. The purpose is slightly different. But just having a look at the cards, just to have a comparison, but not necessarily pointing out all of the differences. And I will also say that this is not a perfect deck. This one to me is, but I understand that it's not for a lot of people. This one is not a perfect deck because there's a couple of things that I'm not like 100% in love with, but it's not a deal breaker at $36. You know what I mean? Had it been a deal breaker for $444 then I would have been really upset. But in this case, I'm like, you know what? It's beautiful. It works really well. I love it. It's fine. It's just one thing that I'm not like super in love with is this, I don't know, banner at the, sorry, let me just zoom in. So it's the banner at the bottom of the cards. So let me just push them back up. So this one here, and in this case, is the Ace of Cups, and I would just do this and point at the sentence here, the super blood moon eclipse. So obviously this is what you will find in the guidebook as well, and if this card had been the Six of Swords, we would have seen Odessa on the card. I'm not entirely a fan, so I know that I said that about the Magician Martyrs and Madman Tarot, that I actually really do appreciate the name of the character on the card, and I would have in this case. It's just that what I don't like is the banner. The banner itself, that looks like a piece of torn paper, something like that. I just really don't think that it's very, when it comes to style, it doesn't really blend with the art style on the cards, with the colors. And I personally think that they could have done something different. I'm not an artist, so I probably shouldn't say it. I would have preferred something different. Let's put it this way. But that is the only thing that I feel like I'm not entirely in love with. When it comes to everything else, what I see right now in both these decks is how powerful Anna Torian's artwork is, and how much I love it, and how much it resonates with me. And I'm super happy that they kept the devil, because this is one of the most beautiful devil cards I've ever seen. And honestly, this is one of those decks that really, as I was saying earlier, it does take you on an adventure. It is a world of fantasy you enter. And quite literally as well, because the full card is this character entering the portal that is on this the base of this really big tree. So there is this sense of entering some kind of parallel world and noticing all of these things with the opportunity to either resonate with them or not. What I think is, it's really well done, both of them. And I don't know if you can tell, but by doing this card by card, side by side, apart from the slight differences that there are in some of these cards, I think you will notice that they look exactly the same. I mean, obviously not talking about the banner at the bottom of the card, but they look 99% the same. So I would say excellent guidebook. I would say fantastic cardstock, by the way. I did say that I didn't want to compare it, but it is a fantastic cardstock. It's not gilded, as you can see. Is that a deal breaker? Not really. And on top of everything, honestly, I don't really expect it for a deck that I only paid $36 for. So absolutely great. Great experience, great readings with this deck. I would definitely focus on this one from now on that I've got it, because as I said, mass market, affordable, easy to find, great alternative. So I hope that you liked and enjoyed and agreed with the alternatives that I gave you in this video. If you have others that you know of, please let me know in the comments below. I'm always curious. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye.